nice answer. Radio. Loved radio from the very early days. Discovered radio, I guess, really discovered. I remember when I was a kid, I was like, there used to be this FM channel. You had one FM channel, and we only used to come at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and finish at about 5 or something. It's like a test channel. So early days of radio, like that. But the real realization came when I went overseas, studied in England, and suddenly realized that radio could be so different. Radio at the time in Malaysia was very like RTM-ish, but once I went overseas, the radio was a lot more lively, especially the morning show was fantastic. There was Capital Radio at the time in London with Chris Tarrant, made me laugh all the time. There were also other channels, which actually wasn't, to be honest, I wasn't actually that interested in, but there were also talk stations who were actually discussing very substantive issues, like politics, economics, life as a whole. So that's why radio specifically in Malaysia. Fairly, the nice thing about radio in Malaysia, it's basically because of the, when I look at media as a whole, I love media, I love all kinds of media, I love the fact that we, to be able to like put something out that people read or write about or hear or watch. Radio, interestingly, is interesting for me because of basically the structure of Malaysian commuting patterns. Traffic is a bad thing, right? Traffic is really bad in KL, it's bad in Bangkok, it's bad in Asia. In places where traffic is bad, it's harder, people take a long time, people spend a long time in their vehicles. So for me, radio was a great medium, medium of communication, media to reach audiences. At the time, I had started, my first venture was a newspaper. Actually was a classified paper, something like, Motor Trader, right? You heard Motor Trader? Started at the same time as I did. I did classifieds, but I did classifieds like everything. Motor Trader focused on cars. They did a better business model actually, to be perfectly honest, and that focus was very, very important. But paper was also, I think paper costs money. The second thing about paper is that, you need distribution. Radio, you do not need distribution. It's on your handset in your car. Radio says already distributed to your car, so I don't have to worry about distribution. Newspapers, you need to worry about distribution. Another thing about radio is not as expensive as newspapers. It's not as expensive as TV. A person, a lot of radio stations are based on just community radio outside overseas, where basically they start like volunteers. Having said that, coming back to your point, when I looked at the radio market, when I looked at the newspaper market, I actually did before starting a business, I always look at the revenues of each, the sort of market revenue of each particular medium. I think newspapers are great. I think those days I was first doing it at 1.2 billion, outdoors like 50 million, magazines were about 100 million divided by 100 million, radio was about 200 million, right? So look at this market size and I'm thinking, okay, which is the best bang for the buck in terms of the money you need to invest in and the return that you might get away. So, and then I calculated, literally calculated, how many people are there in radio, how many radio stations are there, how many magazines are there? Alright, this is simple statistics. 100 million ringgit revenue divided about 1,000 magazines. So how much is the revenue per magazine, roughly average, right? 100,000 ringgit per magazine per annum. Is that a lot of money? Can you survive on that? Not really, right? No doubt, right? Per world, probably get the lion's share of it all. So therefore, the new magazine will even have an even smaller market share. So based on that basis, you just do some rough calculations, 100,000 on average, and actually most, 90% will probably earn less than 100,000. You want to do a magazine, yet another magazine. What about distribution? What about how do you get this, how do you get these magazine vendors to distribute your magazine, shelf space, etc., etc., etc. A whole lot of work. A whole lot of work. Other options, TV, forget it. It's a huge, very expensive affair. In fact, it's even the revenue it gets is also lower than newspapers. Newspapers, the other one. We have Siva from that sort of news background, but online, but sort of the newspaper background, the news background. Also, a very tough market to break even. Look at the Sun, how long they take to break even. It's a huge cost operation. You need to lead people, and your running costs are very, very high. Printing paper, okay? So very, 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 very high cost. Revenue-wise, the break distribution is also big, big problem. You have to deal with the Selangor News Vendors Association. They're mafia. Seriously, you don't mess around with them. The first time I remember starting TeAM classifieds and going to Selangor News Vendors Association, I felt like going through a true Bollywood bad guy. The guy came in with 5 rings on his things, then goons left, right, and center. He said, "Tell Mr. Malek, what must he do before he launches a newspaper? Mr. Malek, you must talk to this boss first, sir. You must talk to this boss. After you talk to this boss, he will kill your newspaper." That's the kind of thing. It's truly like Bollywood movie. So basically, it's why radio, coming back to the point, reasonably decent revenues, market sizing, about 200, now it's about 300 million ringgit a year now. And I looked at it, was about 200 something. How many radio stations are there? Okay, there's a number amount, but only 3 groups, really big groups: Media Prima, AMP, and Star RFM. Think of the government stations; they just occupy airspace. Not much. And there's 42 government stations. You need to privatize all of them. But anyway, and then do I have a unique selling proposition for that particular market? And the answer, I thought I had. The unique selling proposition was every other radio station with entertainment, we were going to be a substantive radio station. Why radio? Yeah.
Fantastic.
All right. So what I want to highlight was a little bit. I want to highlight that it was not just like, oh, why? No, radio is fantastic. Die. It's actually some market sizing involved. It's also looking at positioning, drawing matrices, right? We're going, okay, across languages, where do you want to position yourself? Here, or here, right? Across ages. So it's something there's research involved in that. Not difficult. It took a couple of months, but it's still research. Next question. Just was logical. Okay. Partners. Let's come to partners. Partners will come in and go on. Correct. Partners, interestingly, at the end of the day, if it's your baby, if it's your idea, then I think you have to be prepared to go it alone with help, right? Partners can come in very strong. Just so that you know, in terms of partners, my first venture was the most loneliest venture. It was a newspaper. It's my first startup. Had all the ideas didn't know really of anyone to ask for help. Very difficult. It becomes very lonely. When you recruit people, they tend to when you recruit people, there's a certain level of like, okay, you're the boss, and you should know what to do. But hey, I was only 32 at the time, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't have anyone to go to ask for advice. It becomes a very lonely thing, and you start to be, we have doubts are magnified. So at some point in time, you need to, if it's your idea, you think you need to be able to persevere. As time went on, the next venture was Jump Street. I was asked by Mark to join him to expand Jump Street regionally. This was in 1999. Then it became a bit of a, I realized, my gosh, it became a livelier place. Then you had 2 people brainstorming a few things. And then Suresh joined in, and then there was 3 people starting to brainstorm and